she's fighting multiple baboons with her fists. Like, I mean, do you know how strong a baboon is? The Blue Eye Samurai is a 3D animation made by a French studio, not unlike Arcane in a lot of ways. I should be more specific because that will maybe give people the wrong impression. But it appears similar to Arcane. Like, the animation style is Arcane / Into the Spider-Verse-esque, you know? And it looks beautiful, I will say that much. I think I prefer Arcane's animation. I've heard people say that this even steps Arcane up a notch. I'm like, nah, I think it's not as strong as Arcane from an animation standpoint. So, the main character is a woman posing as a man in order to infiltrate Edo in, I guess, what was it, like, is it 16th century, 17th century Japan? Yeah, I think it's 17th century Japan. And Mizu is a half Japanese, half British woman. And a half Japanese, half British woman who is posing as a man. Now, off the bat, a lot of people are going to be like, oh, okay, like, what is this, like a trans character or something? And it's not played like that at all. And although there's a lot of elements that I know are going to bother some of the people like in our audience who get really bothered by, like, you know, the political messaging stuff, the message, okay, like that stuff. And I can see a lot of people dropping this one quick because they're thinking it's going to be super preachy, but it isn't. And the story is actually quite good, and the characters are good, and even the ones who seem kind of annoying at first end up getting stuff to do, which makes you care about them a lot more. Mizu is a half Japanese, half British woman who is hidden by her mother because her father is a very bad person. Like, he was effectively like a pirate that came to Japan and did some sort of organized crime stuff, fathered a bunch of bastards, and then left. And he apparently wanted a lot of those bastards killed, or other ones would sell them and stuff. So it's like a really dark sort of premise, but it makes it so that Mizu has to live as a boy to hide because they're looking for a girl who was this guy's kid to kill. So I don't know. It's kind of like the premise is set up pretty quickly that, yeah, this person has just effectively been on the run and been hidden their entire life and are using the living as the other gender as a way to hide. The character is using the cross-dressing as subterfuge to survive, essentially. And something bad happens to her, and she effectively goes on a quest for revenge. I'm not going to say exactly what because it's a little more complicated than it seems like it is at first. So I don't really want to end up spoiling anything. So she goes on the run and then learns to fight and learns to create a sword for herself and decides to go on a quest for revenge. And as that's happening, she's continuing to live as Mizu, this Japanese man who is now this Ronin samurai, effectively. Or Ronin, as they said. I didn't know it was Nin. I always thought it was Ronin, but it's, I guess, Ronin. They say it a lot. I don't know. But this was made by Americans and French people, so who knows? Maybe they're the wrong ones. They're probably right, though. But yeah, so what's interesting about what they do with that, though, is it has a lot of story necessity in the world and the world building, because women can't even move around that world as easily as men can. Like, they have to have male chaperones to enter the big cities and stuff like that. So it would be very difficult for her to go on the type of mission that she's trying to go on, which is effectively a Kill Bill style revenge quest. And they execute it in a way that makes you think, huh, okay, well, we might have thought that this was going to be preachy message stuff because of the initial premise and how they set it up. But then if you keep watching, it's like, oh, wait, no, they're doing stuff with this in the story. It's not just pandering. It's not just thrown in there for the sake of it. It actually has a narrative function. And I thought that was really cool. And I think they did it very well. The side characters often begin on the annoying side, with the exception of the old blacksmith. That dude rocks. He's awesome from the get-go. But the other ones are presented in a way that they are intentionally supposed to get on your nerves a little or not be very likable, because you're sort of supposed to look at them as the foil for the protagonist, or almost obstacles, except for Ringo. He's a large guy who doesn't have hands. Like, he was born without hands. I don't know what exactly his affliction would be, but essentially he was a birth defect guy. But he's huge and very strong and quite handy. Ringo gets a lot better. But the thing is, you're like, wow, so her sidekick's going to be a dude with no hands. Like, how is that ever going to work? But you see the function that he plays in the story and how he ends up helping her and why he ends up wanting to help her. And it's like, yeah, I kind of like Ringo now. Like, he's no longer the annoying Jar Jar Binks type character. He's a legitimate ally who has like flat out saves the day at times by just being clutch. So it's like, well, I mean, you know, he's pretty cool. And then there's more people that are kind of set up as antagonists who eventually become frenemies, I guess, like kind of allies / enemies maybe at times. And I think they're all given a lot of really meaningful, solid story. And the 5th episode of this show is great. Really, really good, because it's the first huge action scene. Like one that's most like the House of Blue Leaf scene in Kill Bill, the Crazy 88 fight, because it's her fighting a whole bunch of dudes who have weapons and are in very similar clothing. I think what's cool about how they do it is she doesn't just automatically take them all on. She doesn't do a guts 100-man battle thing where she's taken out every single one of them with no cover and everyone's just waiting their turn to die. She retreats back into the place where they're attacking her at, and then uses stealth and uses subterfuge and strategy and tries to divide and conquer and only take on a few of them at a time. Be in places where they're going to say, okay, you two check in there. You go first. Okay, they die. It's like, okay, well, now 3 of us are going in next. Okay, can we bring more people in? And it's like, okay, well, yeah, no, she's doing some good stuff there, man. Like, she's really kind of accounting for disadvantages. And she's injured in that episode at one point and gets a second wind that is hinted to be something that could be mystical. There's not like magic in this show, but there are some implications that there's a higher power at work of some kind, or like, you know, like, I don't know, fate or whatever it would be, the gods. Say what you will about it. There's a thing that happens that they imply, at least in the story, that is her getting a second wind that's fueled by basically a demon spirit. And then she ends up fighting them head on at that point, while still having suffered from the injury. But it's also one where you're like, okay, well, there's a world where I can believe that is an injury that just had her lose blood, because she does pass out from it too, and they don't treat the injury as if it doesn't happen. Like, it takes her out of commission. She almost just loses, but then she basically is having a dream that functions as a flashback, which fills us in on her backstory a bit, and then she comes to and turns into like demon warrior effectively. And it's really cool. It's really awesome. It's a great moment. It's very well done, and the fight scene is phenomenal at that point. I think that's the best animation in the whole show. And I think that's the best episode in the whole show, because the next episode is much more action-packed. It's solid action essentially from beginning to end, but it gets ridiculous because she starts getting very badly injured. I guess there's some minor spoilers here. I guess I should have said some of this before I essentially explained all of episode 5, but I guess I find not a lot of people are talking about this show. I wanted to make a more thorough case for why you should maybe give it your time and watch it, because it's not perfect. And as I'm about to go into, episode 6 turns into a video game, and she gets disabling injuries that do not phase her in the slightest. Like a spike goes through her ankle, like almost like right under the malleolus. Debatably would have sliced a bunch of her tendons and ligaments, and like fully pierced, like, lateral side through to the medial, full 100% puncture. And in the very next scene, she's effectively doing parkour. She's doing it with a little bit of a limp, But it's still like, wow, okay. I mean, now I'm starting to wonder why that stab to the side, like her left side, she kind of gets hooked by this claw thing. If it didn't penetrate her bowels, it wouldn't have been that bad because there's not much there, and obviously if it hit her spleen, she'd be dead. But it's just her large intestine on that side, unlike Sabine's side that was straight through the liver and pancreas in that Ahsoka episode. Details, you know, like, I mean, I don't know if they did that on purpose, but I was like, okay, at least it's in the spot where she's not dead. I was still like, I don't know if she's getting up to fight after that, but you know, they put a bit of narrative weight behind it, and they're like, yeah, no, but she's actually like fueled by this demon spirit thing. It's like, okay, as long as they don't rely on that too much, okay. Like if they say, okay, there's one time where she's passed out from blood loss or like hypotension or blood pressure dropped too much, she passed out. And then she wakes up and is like, like super anger, gets an adrenaline boost. Her heart starts raging. Her veins constrict from that. And, you know, she gets a second win and fights. And we're assuming somehow she stopped the bleed. I don't know how. But if she was still actively bleeding, it would be a really big problem to do that. But I guess my point is, my disbelief was sufficiently suspended during episode 5's injuries. But episode 6, I'm like, well, she's fighting multiple baboons with her fists. Like, I mean, do you know how strong a baboon is? I was like, well, why make it a baboon? You could have made it, I don't know. Even just like any kind of ape is a bad idea. Dogs are probably your best bet. Because I don't even think you can put a person in a room with like a bunch of jaguars and explain that they can make it out of there alive. I think you could have her take on 3 dogs, like 3 big dogs, like pit bulls. I can kind of get behind that. But baboons? Dude, you take one hit from a baboon, you're done. They probably punch about as strong as Spider-Man would punch. Think of that about the strength difference between us and apes, like great apes that we have in the world, right? There's a giant difference in our ability to hit things and do damage. So once they had her fighting baboons, I was like, oh my god, is this show going to be terrible for the rest of it? And that episode ends kind of okay. Like, it gets better once she gets to the final boss of the video game level that they thrust this character into the middle of this otherwise fairly serious show. And then the episode 7 is much slower and significantly better than episode 6. And episode 8 pays off a lot of the arcs of the series, or at least arcs of the season. So overall, I enjoyed it quite a bit. And I would recommend it. It's not perfect, that's for sure. I wouldn't be calling it a masterpiece. But they're onto something, and I think that they could, if they improve some of the problems in the first season with season 2, and they might be able to end it in 2 seasons, they might do 2 more. And that's signposted pretty well by the final season, the final episode. So it seems like it's going to have a finite arc, and then it'll conclude, and it doesn't seem like it's going to need to have 15 seasons or even 5. They could do it in 2 or 3, which for Netflix, perfect. And it's Exalted too, okay. I've got a thing for that! We have to have the graphics cranked up. You're looking at our cities, baby. I'm like, yeah, but can I turn them down a little so that this game doesn't run like my PS5 is dying?
Yeah, I will leave you in peace is definitely a better thing to say than
Legendary gloves, son!
telling to the blade of Pinocchio, son of Geppetto. Real boy. Also mouse.
X-Ray Girl sometimes does joke that she gave birth to the puppies. At least I think it's a joke.
Yeah! Oh my god, X-Ray Girl did it!